Battlefield 6 is about to go into Season 3, and the best summary I can give the game is this. Battlefield 6 started day 1 with 750,000 people on Steam alone, 20 million copies sold by December, and a competitive tournament that promised $1 million to the winning team that would include the biggest names in FPS. However, look at where we are today. Season 2 was delayed, ultimately killing the game's momentum and player count. Red Sec Elite was cancelled after the devs realized they're too incompetent to make the game work well enough for EA-sanctioned competitive play. Meanwhile, they're firing the developers behind 2025's best-selling release, and the devs that remain are creating random collab motocross events instead of doubling down on fixes or new content. In short, Battlefield 6 wrote checks it couldn't cash. It promised competitive tournaments, a battle royale to challenge Warzone, and a more complete Battlefield experience after years of development, more money than ever before, with 4 studios and over 1,000 devs. And it's not that Battlefield 6 is the worst game ever made, or hell, even the worst Battlefield ever made. It's the fact that EA promised the world and almost immediately realized they're not capable enough to make it happen, with the Red Sec Elite and the delay of Season 2 being the most telling results of this, as Battlefield Studios themselves had to make the call to roll back their own promises after years of touted game testing and AAA development. Today, especially after EA laid off devs from across all 4 studios, it feels like there's been a collective agreement to go back into hiding. No dev talks, minimal engagement from community management, and complete ignorance to the firings, absence of Red Sec Elite, and fundamental gameplay issues that should have been solved months ago before release. Today the game is inching forward. Each update tweaks things bit by bit. Season 2's maps were a strong addition, and new mechanics like night vision are awesome. But there's so many outstanding issues DICE and company need to address that show they don't play their own game nor care about refining the gameplay, as they're busy on cheap, limited-time events. So today, I wanted to take a minute to run through how I, as someone who works professionally in a creative field, would go about fixing Battlefield 6, as there's a lot of little things that need to be tweaked and content strategy that's lacking, even outside the obvious complaints about netcode, which the devs swear they're working on. So with that being said, if you like in-depth reviews and discussions about all things Battlefield, drop a like and hit subscribe, and let's talk about how to fix Battlefield 6. First things first, Battlefield Studios needs to get their momentum back, but in order to do so, they need to acknowledge why their game fell off and who their core audience is. In a recent short from Westy, he spoke about how the game isn't technically that terrible for a casual shooter, but is lacking the magic that the franchise used to have. We went from Siege of Shanghai to Sobek City, from Levolution to limited-time live service events, and from all-out naval warfare complete with AC-130 gunship support to a battle royale that's a copy and paste of a decade-old formula. And sadly, by removing all the extra magic, the game still didn't get any better from a competitive standpoint. Netcode is as bad as ever, audio has regressed, and weapon balance is out the window. And all of this is most likely coming from the fact EA is telling Battlefield Studios they needed to hit 100 million players. Thus, they need to make the most wide-reaching, generic, make everyone happy game to appeal to all gamers. Young, old, COD fans, Battle Royale fans, free-to-play players, and single-player purists, thus leaving us with a game that doesn't do any one single thing well. The campaign is like a daytime cop drama, the gunplay is pretty but woefully geared towards rewarding low-skilled players with faster bullet speed, one-body-shot snipers, and a bigger headshot hitbox than ever before. And the audio is all about cinematics, not clarity, thus harming hardcore players by muddling their game sense and feeling cinematic for free-to-play casuals. Add in all the bugs, netcode, and desync, and the game's so poorly put together on a technical front that Battlefield Studios had to immediately delay content after release, quote-unquote postpone their entry into esports and saw many of their fellow staff fired because of it. Battlefield 6 tried to please all players from all different FPS, but instead of winning over fans by creating a better product with amazing features, they watered everything down, creating a game that's a mile wide and an inch deep. They need to recognize their true fan base, traditional FPS players with an appetite for clean, class-based military FPS that features great ambiance, not overwhelming cinematics. While classic Battlefield games like Battlefield 4 certainly featured their share of cinematic gameplay, it all came with a sense of player agency, control, and game sense. Today's Battlefield is very much optics over gameplay, as maps like Hagenthal are a mess of dark corners, hazy graphics, and senseless audio, but look really cool in trailers. They need to start to pull back on their cinematic ambitions. While it may have worked in the beginning, it was all style over substance, and the fans have caught on. Start looking at art direction, audio design, and gunplay with a focus on balance and create a game that feels good to play and could perhaps work for a competitive series to help set a standard of quality for the game to aim for. Remove cheesy mechanics like the sweet spot, slow down the TTK, and review player visibility like DICE did in Battlefield 5. In general, start stripping back the experience, with less development time on random shit like the motocross event, and hone in on the core loop and core modes like Conquest, Breakthrough, and Rush, with less random limited time trash, and more development of new weapons, maps, and core progression. Battlefield needs to trim the fat and win back its core audience by focusing back onto its core offerings. Think about how successful games with strong identities are. Apex, CSGO, and Arc Raiders, a game that breaks the mold, but is so committed to its vision, players totally give themselves over to it. Battlefield needs to win players back, not by offering a mediocre experience to everyone, but offering a world-class experience to our more narrow audience and creating a singular vision that's so unique and so compelling that players are forced to jump back on because they can't find it anywhere else. Next up, Battlefield Studios just needs to get some easy wins. There's so many stupid little decisions in this game, even when you ignore the core issues with netcode and desync. Things like the sweet spot, shitty UI, lengthy armor plating animation, and adrenaline pen are such low-hanging fruit to improve the game. Like seriously, why when I pop an adrenaline pen does my screen go black and my audio gets muffled? I thought this was supposed to be a perk, not a handicap. There's so many jacked up mechanics that are muddy or unbalanced that aren't necessarily broken, but are in fact just poorly designed. The devs are making so many bad calls in the pursuit of casual fans. Things like the respawn beacon limits, adrenaline pens that darken your screen, and one-shot mechanics are just here to help low-skilled players have a chance of getting lucky, or punish players that would have otherwise used those tools within the sandbox to outplay other players. And across the board, these super fast TTK, broken gunplay, and unbalanced armor mechanics, combined with all the issues of desync and netcode, make sloppy gunplay mechanics from DICE perform even worse in reality. On top of rebalancing dozens of core mechanics, better monetization, like being able to buy bundled items separately, would go a long way helping community relations, and adding in-game leaderboards, community tabs, platoons, and clan tags back would go so far in healing the fanbase, again driving that sense of who a Battlefield fan really is. Finally, the last big change I'd look for is redefining the game's content strategy, which is something I've spoken about in prior videos. Now, first things first, the best way to create more high-quality content is to stop firing the devs that made the best-selling game of the year. Next up after that, I think mine and the community's biggest gripe with the current live service is the wild misuse of resources on limited time modes, like the Red Bull Supercross event. While live events and rotating playlists are important to any live service, spending huge chunks of development resources on plastering Red Bull logos around the Battle Royale map is such a waste of time when the very producers in charge complain about not having enough resources to create the content fans were expecting. But the bigger concern I have with limited time modes is how leadership has publicly gone on record talking about how they're using limited time content to satisfy different types of players, purposely making random content like motocross racing to appease players that aren't even fans of Battlefield, while at the same time spending resources making great Battlefield-centric content like the night vision modes, then promising to remove the mechanic after the event. But honestly, to fix a lot of this, they need to stop with the excuses and return to the content plan that was delivered via Premium. We used to get 4 maps, upwards of 10 weapons, and 5 vehicles every couple months all the way back in Battlefield 3. Today we get half that while the studio has infinitely more resources, more prospective paying customers, and larger budgets than we've ever seen. But the strategy is totally ass backwards based on excuses and greed. Their goal of 100 million players is getting stretched so thin that they're moving past FPS fans and just creating random limited-time, low-effort events to coax new free-to-play players to sign in, create an account, and pad their stats before deleting the mode and dropping them. They hooked traditional Battlefield fans with the trailers and base content, COD fans with the Battle Royale, and are now aiming for arcade racing fans with the Supercross event. And after a while, you can see a pattern of creating content, capturing that player base, and then moving on, thus leading the core multiplayer in shambles, red sec to rot, and the limited time modes in the trash. Each item of content is just a momentary strategy targeted to capture a specific player type and then dropped or thrown away. Thus, that's why the progression in content feels so disconnected in this game. Battle passes and events break up progression, and content like maps are made in a vacuum, with mechanics like night vision being scattered and underutilized. They need to create content with stronger thematic connections, cascading progression, and a more universal application of new mechanics. Return to the thematic map bundles like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 1 did really well, where maps flow together through operations and weapons feel like bundles based on factions or time periods. Double down on long-term progression and expand endurance challenges with more meaningful rewards instead of just stickers. And make sure new content, whether it be maps or mechanics, always gets backwards compatibility with prior content, whether that's making maps that connect to the old ones for operations, or if that's adding night vision to vanilla environments. Battlefield Studios has the ability to create great content. The game looks beautiful, can execute on cool mechanics like night vision, and has the systems in place to deliver it. But they need to be smarter and focus on what actually matters to their paying fanbase. Make an experience that's so dense, so committed to its own vision, and so well executed that it becomes something the industry can't ignore. And while I feel strongly about everything I've pointed out, at the end of the day, Battlefield needs to get their shit together with netcode and fundamental gameplay mechanics, because adding all the content in the world won't matter, and true hardcore player investments can't happen unless the game actually works, and even more so for competitive play. But ultimately, while Battlefield 6 can certainly be turned around, I think immediately after release, EA realized 2 things. The delay of Season 2 showed the development behind the game was in fact incompetent, which then caused them to lose the willpower to continue supporting it, thus the layoffs and apparent move to Battlefield 7. EA got their money, saw the writing on the walls, cut payroll, and got out. So here we are yet again with a Battlefield game that's got a world of potential but with horrible development culture, corporate shenanigans, and a decades-old game engine that still can't be fixed. But guys, let me know what you'd fix first in Battlefield 6, and for everything else Battlefield, stay tuned and subscribe, and as always, thank you guys for watching.